If you have even spent 5 minutes on tech Twitter, you have probably heard this phrase. It's just a wrapper. People say like it's an insult, like the company is fake, like there is no real engineering involved. But here's the crazy part. ChatGPT itself is a wrapper. Python is a wrapper. Your operating system is a wrapper. Even civilizations are built on wrappers. So, in this video, let's finally understand what wrappers actually are, why do they exist, and why do some wrapper companies have become billion-dollar business companies. Let's try to simplify this as much as possible. For example, let's say you are going to purchase a camera. You are Rahul and you want to purchase a camera. When you go to the shop, you don't directly get the camera, right? You get it inside something known as a packaging, right? You get it inside a box, and which is like a wrapper around the camera. It is wrapped in plastics with the certain kind of tapes, and that's where you get your camera. So it's like a decorative piece in which your actual camera or the actual entity exists. So the same way is how wrappers are present. Let's understand what is a wrapper here. Okay, imagine you going to ChatGPT, you give it a prompt and you get the response. Here you are not going to the GPUs to configure it. You are not actually writing the APIs there, right? So what you are doing here is you are a user. You are saying like, okay, write me an email. You are saying it via the wrapper application, which is the UI of ChatGPT, UI and UX. For example, let's say I go to ChatGPT right in front of you and I say, write me an email. Okay. So here I'm not actually writing any APIs to GPT. I'm not actually talking to the server. I'm just writing my input prompt. And when I click on send, what happens is there are certain set of activities that I see. There's this button that glows up. I get a response in a streaming way. So this is like the UI and the UX. Okay. This is like a wrapper around the internal working of ChatGPT. Now, when I sent a mail, I said, write me a mail. What happened is there was an API call made to the servers, and then I got the response. So that is what happens. You have the wrapper app. Inside that, you make an API call, which goes into the raw intelligence, into the ML model or the LLM model on which ChatGPT is trained. Here, for example, it uses GPT-4 API. Based on your use case, it can use different kind of APIs. So it is going to call the GPT-4 API, and then that API calls to the GPUs or the servers. When the server has the response, it then gets into the response API, then into the wrapper app. It goes into the response API, then into the wrapper app, and then the user gets the response. So this is like a wrapper that is built. Okay. And to give you a much clear insight, let's get into one of the most interesting things of how the entire AI ecosystem is working. Okay. This is very interesting thing. So all starts with something known as quartz sand. Sand is the sand that you see on the beaches. Taking the raw sand, there is something called ASML. What ASML does is it turns raw quartz sand and specialized light optics into the world's most complex machinery. That has dependency on TSMC. TSMC, what it does is it wraps complex UV lithography machines into service of making semiconductors. These semiconductors are the chips that are used in your mobile phones, in your laptops, and all the other electronic items that you see. Next, NVIDIA, the main NVIDIA company, is a wrapper on top of TSMC. What does NVIDIA do? It wraps specialized chip architecture designs and around high precision manufacturing. Okay. Next, OpenAI. What is OpenAI? OpenAI is a wrapper around the transformer architecture, which was brought out by Google. So it's a wrapper. What it does is it wraps around massive CPU clusters and electricity into an intelligence API. Next, ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a wrapper around OpenAI. What it does, it turns raw mathematical architecture of the transformer into a conversational agent. And then currently what we use, if you are someone who is using Codex, if you are someone who is using anti-gravity, Claude Code, these are the wrappers around the LLMs, which is ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. What it does, it turns simple English chat into working prototypes. So this is how the entire dependency chain exists. Okay. So this is the dependency chain of the wrappers. And if you see, there are millions of dollars of company that are built here. Nvidia, Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini. So this is the power of creating wrappers. Now the question arises like, okay, we created a wrapper, but how do we understand if it is a good one or a bad one? Let's give you a very simple example. What is a need of wrappers as a developer point of view? Let's consider you are a developer. Which one of these things would you like? Obviously, you would go for the second one where you have a good UI, you can interact with the UI and get the response. Now, the same thing what happens here is if you have a very raw response, it is in a JSON format. Usually, this is not the case. We have a lot more, response in the key object value pair, and it looks very bad as a developer point of view, right? What wrapper does here is it removes the complexity. Rather than with this, we get something like this. Take a very simple example. You have an API, which is of the following format. We have the response where the data, primary, error details built with the script, XYZ is written. Would you prefer using the API or would you prefer going with the web UI? Obviously, for any kind of a user, it's more preferable to go with the web UI. So, as I said, wrappers removes the complexity. The complex structure that we see here, it is removed by the wrapper and helps you display it over here. Okay. So now you said, okay, AI dependency graph is present. So is it that the wrappers are only used in the AI domain? No, wrappers are almost used everywhere. And the next thing that I'm trying to show is what will blow your mind. If you see, the technological evolution was with the help of wrappers. Things started with C programming. Python was a wrapper on top of C programming. Then came frameworks like Django, Fast API, and UV framework, which were on top of Python, which was a wrapper around Python. And based on that, AI coding agents came. These are wrapper on top of the frameworks like LangChain, LangSmith, LangGraph. So this is about technological frameworks like the Python or programming frameworks. When we talk about cloud, the biggest thing here is earlier we had raw servers, then came AWS, and then this is the biggest example of wrapper being used across the world, and it is one of the best profitable companies around here, which is Vercel. Vercel is a wrapper on top of AWS. Next, taking a last example here, earlier we had raw banking to go to the banks and do the transaction. Then came Stripe. Stripe is a payment gateway which is used for doing payments. We can take an example of Razorpay. These are wrapper around the raw banking. And what helps here is it helps in the modern fintech applications. Okay. Now, here a question arises like, okay, you have told about the technological evaluation. How can we differentiate between a good wrapper and a bad wrapper? So this is how we can differentiate. If the wrapper has very thin UI, it has no unique workflow, no integrations, no memory, meaning the database, no ecosystem, and it's easily replaceable, that means we say that this is a bad wrapper. Okay. Whereas if a wrapper has a good workflow automation, team collaboration, domain expertise, private data, integrations, distribution, brand trust, that means this is a good wrapper. Okay. So if you see the companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, these have all these features right away. You can have integrations, you can connect to different MCP servers, you can connect to different tools. The distribution is used, people are now able to trust these brands, the domain expertise is there, and you also have your private data. That's where we say these are good wrappers and these are good billion-dollar wrapper companies. And just to be clear, wrapper does not mean it provides a low value. Wrapper is just an abstraction over something that is built. Okay. So next time someone says it's just a wrapper, remember almost every important software product in history was a wrapper. So, what's the most powerful wrapper you use every day? Please let me know in the comment section given below. And yeah, this was it for the video. I hope you guys liked the video. If you like it, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next one. Until then, bye bye.